everybody, Trevor here. And guess what? I've officially reached over 5.5 thousand subscribers! And since I've accomplished that achievement, it's time to celebrate with a brand new top 8 video on Thomas and Friends, which will be about my reasons for loving this show in the first place. Please note that I was originally going to make this a top 10, but I've changed my mind and made it a top 8 because those are all the reasons I could think of. After all, it's not the first time I've done a top 8 video. Another reason why I'm making this video is because I'm sure some of you who are new to my channel are wondering why I love Thomas and Friends so much. Now, keep in mind that this will be the final top video for June this year because sooner or later, I will have another surgery appointment on my left wrist again. So without wasting any more time, let's celebrate with these important reasons, shall we? Number 8. It was based on a children's book series known as the Railway Series. Now, the Railway Series was originally written by a reverend in England known as Wilbur Awdry. One time, his son Christopher Awdry was sick in bed due to measles, while his father told him bedtime stories about talking trains, which I thought was very sweet of him to do. When Christopher Awdry asked his father who that sad blue engine was in the shed, the first name that popped up into Wilbur's head was Edward, which I thought was an interesting fact. When it comes to talking train stories in general, the Railway Series will always be number 1 on my list because it's more down to earth compared to other kids' books even back then. And that's what made Thomas magical in the first place, because it's about talking trains who live and work on the fictional island of Sodor, but with realistic elements here and there. For instance, the engine characters, especially Thomas, move like actual real-life locomotives rather than cartoony ones that were mostly seen in other forms of fiction. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen anymore. Number 7. It's the reason why I love British culture in general. Even though I'm an American citizen and proud of it for the most part, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy other cultures from foreign countries, especially the United Kingdom where Thomas originated from. Hell, I also love Wallace and Gromit, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Bob the Builder, Postman Pat, Peter Rabbit, and even The Wind in the Frickin' Willows, particularly the 1995 adaptation with Rick Mayall as Mr. Toad. God, I love British cartoons and movies in general. Oh, and in terms of British terms like driver and fireman, I sometimes like to mix up both British and American terms just to have a little variety in my speech. And other times, I like to say certain terms like driver and fireman instead of engineer and stoker, as well as trucks instead of freight cars. Yeah, as you can tell, if it wasn't for Thomas the Tank Engine, I wouldn't have learned about British terminology and culture in general. I'm so thankful that Barrelcroft brought this show to America in 1989. Otherwise, I wouldn't have grown up with talking trains in a children's show. Oh, and that brings me to my next point. Number 6. It inspired me to be a train enthusiast in the first place. In other words, if it wasn't for this franchise, I wouldn't have been interested in trains to begin with. In fact, this show was the real reason why I love trains so much and how a railway operates. Ever since I was a little kid, I went onto a lot of train rides with my family all over the country of the USA, including the Disneyland Railroad in Anaheim, California, as well as the Boone and Scenic Valley Railroad in Boone, Iowa, just to name a couple. Okay, well, I didn't necessarily go on all the train rides in America, because there are some more I have yet to experience, such as the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad in Colorado, which I'm hoping will happen someday. Coming out number 5 is the original music by Junior Campbell and Michael O'Donnell. These two composers worked on the show from seasons 1 all the way to 7 before stepping down and replaced by Ed Welch and Robert Hartshorn. While these new composers did an okay job for the most part in terms of music, but nothing beats the original score by Junior Campbell and Michael O'Donnell because they were true legends, even though Huey Man from Thomas Magic Railroad comes at a close second. In fact, one of my absolute favorites was the epic and intense runaway theme that was used in the classic model era. I especially enjoyed the majestic Flying Kipper theme that was first used in season 1. And one more example will be James's jazzy theme, which was first used in season 1. They wrote other great songs too, including those with lyrics, but if you want more information on why I love some of those songs, you should check out my musical top video playlist on my YouTube channel. Otherwise, we'd be here all day. Number 4, the live action animation as well as the CGI series. Ah, yes, the classic models. Those were the days. Back when Thomas and Friends was realistic as hell. The models and sets looked pretty splendid with every single detail and facial expression for each character. It just looks like you're watching a giant toy train set on television, which would almost be the size of the real world. This lasted from season 1 all the way to 12 before switching to CGI animation due to budget cuts, which does explain why Barrelcroft mortgaged her house a couple of times to fund the show to begin with. Yeah, the model work and sets were quite expensive even at the time. Now, in my honest opinion, I didn't really mind the switch to CGI animation in the first place because while it may not be as realistic or down to earth as the original models and sets, the CGI on Thomas looks really good. Not only can give the characters lip movements and blinking abilities, as well as making the humans and animals move by themselves, but ever since Hero the Rails, they brought back individual voice actors. The first time they did this was in Thomas Magic Railroad, that is, if you don't count the Japanese dub of the classic series. And not to mention, CGI animation is faster, easier, and cheaper to make these days because you can make the show either cartoony like Chuggington or realistic like the Polar Express. And the actual CGI Thomas itself does a bit of both in plenty of cases. Like it starts off bad in terms of writing and moral execution, but it got better in season 17 through 21 thanks to people like Andrew Brenner. Oh, and to those of you who complained about the CGI switch, even at the time, well, all I can say is,
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
I mean, seriously, you should be thankful and happy that most of the models and props are on display in certain places like Drake Manor and the Model Railway Museum in Japan. But still, here's hoping that the preserved TV props are in good hands by Mattel because I don't want them to end up like the Thunderbirds puppets, which were sadly thrown into the trash years ago from what I've heard. But regardless, whether in live action or CGI form, the first 24 seasons will always hold a special place in my heart regardless of their ups and downs. I mean, they're all gold compared to the crappy 2D animation by Nelvana in the reboot. And I'm not going to repeat myself as to why. Number 3. The characters themselves, as well as the life lessons that each of the characters learn. I've made a bunch of top videos regarding some of my favorite kinds of Thomas characters, including members of the Steam team, as well as road vehicles, narrow gauge engines, diesels, humans, etc. Some of my favorites include the titular character Thomas, Trevor the traction engine, who has the same name as I am, Diesel 10, who is my most favorite Thomas villain, and of course, Duncan, who is one of my absolute favorite narrow gauge engines on the Skarlory Railway. If you want more information on these top videos, I'll provide links in the description below. Now let's talk about the life lessons. When it comes to children's shows in general, I'm always a sucker at life lessons ever since I was a child, mainly because they teach me to be a better person as I grew up. There are other great shows that do that too, but Thomas beats them all in my opinion because I watched that show religiously and almost every day ever since I was a toddler. Perfect examples of great morals from the show include friendship, working together, trust, and honesty. And yes, there are some duds here and there when it comes to the original show, but most of the other episodes, even in the Andrew Brenner era, are really well executed in terms of writing and morality. Number 2. The clever writing, humor, and common sense, particularly in seasons 1 to 7, as well as in seasons 17 through 21. As I stated earlier in the video, the writing in Thomas and Friends, as well as in the Railway series, was so good because it reflects the real world for the most part, and because of that, it shows us how a real-life railway operates. Now, I don't mind some cartoony moments here and there, especially in Thomas Magic Railroad, but I mostly prefer to stay true to the original source material as much as possible, because that's what Wilbur Awdry wanted in the first place. In addition, I like the funny and humorous moments every now and then, both in the books and TV series, because they appeal to both kids and adults in a way. And I don't mean innuendos like in Animaniacs. I mean humor that's a little bit mature that the older audience members can understand easily. And not to mention that the characters themselves would often give each other a hard time by teasing each other, which is one of the classic charms from the books and TV show. Sure, they're not always this mean, but they're basically jokes that the characters often pull. Heck, even my family members often joke and rag on me occasionally. And finally, number one, the toys themselves, and other Thomas merchandise too. Another huge reason why I'm a die-hard Thomas fan is the merchandise itself, including the classic Thomas toys that I grew up with as a kid, such as Ertl, Wooden Railway, and the old Tomy Trackmaster system. I'll provide a link to my top 5 favorite Thomas toy brands video in the description if you want more details. But the toys aren't the only things I buy for myself. I also buy most of the Thomas tapes, DVDs, and books, particularly in the US region, because the problem with the UK DVDs is that they're not compatible with American VCRs, which explains why I only buy US releases of the show. And when it comes to the Thomas books, my most important ones in my collection would have to be the first 26 books by the Reverend Wilbur Awdry himself. Though I do have a couple other books written by Christopher Awdry, but I don't have the whole new collection, unfortunately. Man, if only we Americans get our own copies of the Christopher Awdry collection as well. Not to mention the discontinued history books on the island of Sodor. Now, those would be very nice to have as well. Anyways, those were my honest 8 reasons why Thomas attention is so important to me. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to, and click the bell icon to be notified for my latest uploads. And once again, thank you guys so much for giving me over 5.5 thousand subscribers. It really helps me and my channel a lot. Oh, and here's hoping that the 80th anniversary of the Railway series next year will be overall great, because I've heard they're going to restore and release the Down the Mine pilot from 1983 onto DVD and or Blu-ray as one of the bonus features, and I do hope we Americans get a copy of it too once it comes out in 2025. This is Trevor Davis, signing off, and have a great day.